It's ready.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تسألون به وأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله رسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد. There's a concept in social psychology. Many years ago, I learned about this in undergrad, taking social psychology, and that's called the fundamental attribution error. So it deals with how people make evaluations and character judgments of other people and of ourselves. So this theory is very simple. So simple that you probably don't even need to be put in the theory. It's something that you probably observed on your own. But nonetheless, I'll share it for the benefit, especially because I want to talk about today. It lends itself to this theory. Basically, what it is that it's the idea that human beings, we had a tendency when looking at the behavior of other people, we tend to minimize the external circumstances of their behavior. We minimize that. We minimize the environment that might have influenced another person's behavior. We minimize all outside factors, and we put an extra emphasis on those internal things. So basically, we're more likely, when we're talking about somebody else's behavior, we're more likely to attribute that bad behavior to a character flaw, to their personality, to them just being a bad person. Generally speaking, that's how we tend to look at the behavior of human beings. Whereas when we look at our own behavior, there's a tendency within people to minimize the internal things, the things that might come from our own character, the things that might come from our own way of thinking, and place an extra emphasis on the external things, especially when it comes to the bad behavior, because we have an excuse for our behavior. We have a reason We always have a reason. Our circumstances is always different. There's always a circumstance that you got to understand. There's always an extra twist that you got to be able to catch when it comes to us explaining our own shortcomings and our own bad behavior. It's like, nah, you don't get it. You don't get it. This particular person, they drove me over the top. But you won't give that same excuse for another person. You don't get it. This person that drove me over the top, they're like no other. They're like no other annoying person that you ever heard of. You don't get it. I got to go and do haram because like my circumstances is just like really, really different. It's really different. I got to go out and do haram because my stuff is so different. Like you wouldn't even believe. If I had to tell you about it, you wouldn't believe it if I gave you all the details. As if other people didn't come from difficult circumstances. As if other people didn't have challenges. Well, we're like that when it comes to ourselves. But when we look at other people, nah, they don't want to get right because they don't want to get right. They don't want to come to the masjid because they don't want to come to the masjid. We don't give them those excuses. And it's interesting that when you look at it, when you look at the character of a Muslim, it should contradict this theory. I remember being in a company and one of my teachers, he would emphasize the fact that we should always look at other people as if they're better. And when you look at other people as if they're better, not in a self-defeating way. You know, our people, we got a flair for the dramatic. We do. We love the dramatic. So when we say, look, you should think of everybody as better than you, then we're just walking around, oh man, I'm nothing, and you just, oh man, the dirtiest shoe is better. No, that's not it. When you say look at people as if they're better, this is a very, very practical thing. Very simple thing, not in a self-defeating way. Are you supposed to look at everybody else as if they're better? It's not meant to give you a low self-esteem. It's not meant for you to just put yourself down, because at the end of the day, we're still the children of Adam. We still have honor. We still have dignity. So when you look at other people as if they are better than you, what does that mean? It means this. I know my sins. I know all of my sins because I'm there when I'm doing them. Even the sins that you don't know about, the sins I committed privately, I know my sins that I committed privately. Regardless of whatever anybody wants to say about me, regardless of whatever my reputation might be, I know my sins. I know myself. On the flip side, these other individuals I'm encountering, I don't know their sins. I don't know their shortcomings. I've seen their good. And even if I've seen their sins, I don't know the circumstances behind that. Maybe if they had access to better company, maybe they wouldn't commit those sins. Maybe that's why they commit no sins. You know what? Allah blessed me. Allah blessed me to be guided. Allah blessed me to enter Islam. And He protected me from those behaviors. Maybe if this individual had that same blessing, maybe they wouldn't get into those behaviors. Maybe if they had those same opportunities. Maybe they, you know what? Maybe the same people came to me, they came to them, but maybe they just didn't understand it the right way. Maybe they need somebody to put it to them in a better way. Maybe they need to be truly inspired. So when we look at the behavior of other people, we got to give them these excuses. And that's what it means when we say, you look at other people as if they're better. Because I'm constantly looking at myself. I'm constantly checking myself. Constantly evaluating myself. I'm looking at the things that I've done well. And I'm thinking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for granting me the tawfiq to do so. But I'm also looking at those things, looking at those shortcomings, looking at those sins, looking at those mistakes, constantly reviewing that. Constantly reviewing that. Because this is muhasibah. It's how you take yourself into account. And you don't give yourself those excuses. You don't give yourself those excuses that you're not willing to give other people. Because you got to be real with yourself. You got to be brutally honest before you can actually come to a place where you can really get better, where you can really improve. Nobody has ever gotten better by just lying to themselves. Nobody's ever improved by just lying to themselves and just being stuck and complacent. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to the believers that you have to observe your duty, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to observe your duty and let every soul look at that, what they are going to send for tomorrow. Every soul look at that thing that they prepared for the hereafter. Something we've been commanded by Allah to do is constantly look at our souls, constantly look at ourselves. Because there's a spirit of accountability in Islam. It's the first thing, there's accountability. We're directed to look at that. And unfortunately, we got everything in this day and age, in 2022, going on 2023, we have everything calling us to look at something else besides ourselves, besides what we have prepared for the hereafter. We have everything calling us to look at other things. We have everything calling us to look at the lives of other people. Look at how much money this person's made. Look how much money this person's lost. Look at this new relationship this person's in. Attention away from the fact that you are going to die. We are going to die. We have to answer to Allah. We are going to be accountable. We have to prepare for that. Every day we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to prepare ourselves, to prepare our souls. But you have all these distractions. Unfortunately, some of us, we know about the lives of these people who are not going to benefit us, don't know our names. We know more things about them than we know about our own families that are right in front of us. This is our reality. We know more things about these people who are constantly being pushed up. And unfortunately, we live in a time where you have companies and scientists and people who are spending so much time and energy trying to grab your attention. Some of these companies are not billion-dollar companies because, they're not billion-dollar companies for nothing. They have people who study constantly and trying to figure out how can they get your attention. How can I place this thing how can I place this thing at this particular time in a way that's going to be able to get the most attention from this person? And if you're distracted, if you're inclined to distraction, it's a tough time to be in. Because there's something always trying to take your attention away. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he warned us that there are 5 things that we have to answer for. It says that the son of Adam will not pass away from Allah until he is asked about 5 things: how he lived his life, how he utilized his youth, what means he earned his wealth with, how he spent his wealth, and what he did with his knowledge. We have to answer for all these things that we got. We're accountable. We're accountable. So we can't fall into that common error where we make a mistake and it's somebody else's fault. Somehow, some way, it's somebody else's fault. I fell into the sin because this person, you don't understand how much this person pressed my buttons. You don't understand everything around me was going like, we are going to be accountable. We can't blame somebody else. We can't blame somebody else. We can't say, we can't go stand before Allah and say, listen, I I don't pray in the masjid because I don't like people's behavior. Because they're not responsible for you praying in the masjid. They're not responsible. That has nothing to do with your responsibility. Is it a challenge? Yes. Is it a trial? Yes. But can you legitimately say, listen, I'm not that because of somebody? You can't. Unfortunately, talking to Muslim sisters sometimes, I don't, you know what, I'm not going to cover anymore because, that's just, look at what everybody else is doing. You can't, it's dumb. I'm sorry, I can't put it any other way. I can't put it any other way. If that's your way of thinking, you have been deceived by the shaitan. You've allowed shaitan to deceive you. If you can honestly fix your mouth to say, listen, I'm not going to fulfill this obligation because of the behavior of other people. Does it make you upset sometimes when you look at some of the actions of people who claim to be Muslim? Does it bother you sometimes? Does it make you sad sometimes when you look at the actions and the behavior? Of course. But can we legitimately say, I'm not going to fulfill an obligation that I have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of the actions of other people? We can't. We don't get to do that. We're going to be asked about everything. We're going to be asked about everything. Shaitan, man, he's so tricky. So tricky. So slick. Because after many of us, we walked a very interesting path to get into this deen. The path to this deen was a very interesting path to walk for many of us. All of us have an interesting story. And after going through what we went through to become a Muslim, to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to believe in the last day, to believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to have honor, to bring honor to our names. After everything we went through, you got shaitan extending, what they say, moving the goalposts. Moving the goalposts. Because after you become a Muslim, they'll say, oh no, see, you're a Muslim, but it's not. Well, are you the right Muslim? Are you the right kind of Muslim? You're the right kind of Muslim, because if you're not the right kind of Muslim, you're going to go to hell. That's what you have. You're going to go to hell. Are you sure? Are you sure you've been guided? Are you sure? You going to the masjid? Are you sure you can go to that masjid? Are you sure you can go to that masjid? Positive? No, maybe this is the only one you could go to. Maybe that one's the only one you could go to. And what happened? Come at the time. That's the place you could go to, right? But you don't like that place. Then you don't like Islam because that's the only thing that's Islam to you. Shaitan done it again. Shaitan done it again. Yeah, this is the only place I can go to. This is the only understanding that is Islam. Everything else is not valid. But I don't like this. This doesn't make sense. Oh, well, I guess that's the whole of Islam. Allah knows what's in their hearts because sometimes people are going to do what they're going to do regardless. The shaitan moves the goalposts. Like, imagine the thing. Like, come on, man. We could be in line getting gifts right now. Some of us, that could be our reality. That could be our reality right now. We could be scrambling, trying to figure out how we're going to, rob Peter to pay Paul, just so we could put some gifts under the tree. But Allah blessed us. Allah gave us something much better. You gotta be thankful for that. But we are accountable for what we do with it. Some of us embrace Islam in our youth. Some of us were fortunate enough to be a youth in Islam. Imagine the reward you get for worshiping Allah in your youth. We have time, unbelievable amount of time, And with today's technology, you're able to do some amazing things. Never been able to do ever before. No matter how busy your schedule is, you can, it's amazing that no matter how busy your schedule is, you have access to knowledge. You can work constantly, but you still have access to knowledge. We have so much information at our fingertips. But what are we going to do with the time? Not about the resources. The resources are there. It's the time. We're accountable for our time. And sometimes, unfortunately, we overemphasize the wrong thing. You talk to people about some of the issues that are plaguing themselves in the community, and they tell you a whole bunch of things about other people. Not about their own challenges. Not about their own challenges with people, but just like it's the other person's fault. That's the time that we live in. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always a finger to point at somebody else. It's always the government's fault. It's the imam's fault. It's the brothers down the street. It's their fault. Things are the way they are. My mom and dad, it's their fault. But we forget. That we're able to do this in the dunya, right? Somebody might buy that. Because it's very popular to be a victim in this day and age. If you're a victim, you got a lot of benefits coming to you. We can do that in this dunya. You can't do that with philosophy. You can't. Especially knowing the things that we know. Understanding the things that we understand. We can't do that. We can't get away with that. But we ask how you live your life. The wealth that we have. It's interesting sometimes that you don't realize how much money you have until you start to make less of it. You don't realize how blessed you are until you start to lose some of it. You say, oh man, I had enough money, I could have did this. Man, I could have did this, I could have did that. But our attention is so many different places. We don't have time to just stop and think and be able to just do things in a rational way. When you start to think about things, like, yeah, man, I could have made more, I could have did this, I could have did that. It's only when you start to lose that money that you start to say, dang, man, I had some opportunities. That's why, Sheikh, they say that, it's not about the amount of wealth that you have, it's the barakah in the wealth. If your wealth has no barakah, then you're not going to be able to, it's not going to benefit you. The only thing it's going to do is just tie you up, have you in that rat race, and you're just constantly spinning your wheels. So what did you do with your wealth? And what did you do with the knowledge? What did you do with the knowledge? Because again, Shaitan is crafty. Allah blesses you. Again, like I said, Allah guides you. You begin to learn things. Did you use that knowledge to make yourself better? Did you use that knowledge to worship Allah more? Did you use that knowledge to increase your awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Did you use that knowledge to inspire your family? Did you use that knowledge to inspire the people who are around you, your neighbors, your friends? Did you use that knowledge in a beautiful way? Or did you take those things and you let Shaitan deceive you and sow the seeds of division? Did you use that knowledge and sow the seeds of division? Did you use that knowledge and find reasons to dislike other people? Did you use that knowledge and you find flaws in other people? Just for the sake of finding flaws. It's one thing when we uplift each other, we encourage each other to good. When we see people make mistakes, and as a brother, as a sister, we say, listen, I noticed you did X, Y, and Z, and hey, where'd you learn that at? Oh, did you know you could do this? Oh, okay. Yeah. A lot of people make this common mistake. For example, it's a difference when you correct someone in a beautiful way. and it's empowering. But when we find things, just to have a trump card, just to be like, man, you don't even pray right. And you watch this brother pray wrong. You watch this sister pray wrong. Oh, you don't even pray right. You just watch it. Just watch it. There's something to talk about. How does that benefit? How does that benefit them? At that point, is it knowledge or is it just information that you have? Because real knowledge empowers us. Real knowledge brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Real knowledge empowers the people around us. Transforms lives. So real knowledge does. Go through history, example after example. Example after example of people who changed their lives in the most tremendous way from real knowledge, from knowledge that was beneficial. We gotta ask ourselves, do we have knowledge or do we just have a bunch of information? What is it doing for us? What are we applying? So again, we have this spirit of accountability. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that there's no soul that can bear the burden of another. No soul that can bear the burden of another. We all have our individual responsibilities. And then there's some nuanced things about being in positions of leadership. We can't bear the burden of another. So we may have people that we're responsible for. If they mess up, does that mean we mess up? If they make mistakes, does that mean we make mistakes? Or is it that we have responsibilities due to these people and we have to make sure that we fulfill their rights, and if whatever decision that they make, that's the decision that they make. But for our children, we have to do everything that we can to educate them, to put them in environments where they can succeed, put them in environments where they can grow. We have that obligation to make sure that they are quote unquote raised right. Because you always know when somebody ain't raised right. You gotta raise them right. So we have that obligation. But that doesn't mean my child makes mistakes. I'm responsible for that mistake. If I've done everything I had to do. If I made sure that they had a way, that doesn't mean I'm responsible for that mistake. That doesn't mean I'm responsible for the mistakes of my wife. If I made sure that I was giving her the information that I was required to give her, if I made sure that I warned her about the things I was supposed to warn her about, if I encouraged her about the things I was supposed to encourage her about, if I did all those things and she still, that's not my responsibility necessarily. No soul can bear the burden of another. It's not the imam's fault. You know, when we look at the community and we see things going on, we can't blame other people, man. Can't blame leadership all the time. Can't always blame leadership. Can't always blame the other guys. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to ask you about any of that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you about what you did. We got to be prepared. We got to have an answer. So you had that nuance issue when it comes to leadership. Sometimes people misunderstand that, and maybe it may drive them to be more aggressive in some situations or less aggressive. But it's very important to understand the nuances of being in positions of responsibility and leadership. You have to fulfill your right. You're not responsible for what they do once they, are free to make their own decisions. That's in various situations. You can't blame the scholars, and because you get into this thing where it just becomes a blame game, man. You really do. And this thing is so deep. Right? That The Prophet ﷺ, he said that we have to consult our hearts. Righteousness is what the heart and soul feel comfortable with, while sin is that which causes restlessness in the soul and wavers in the breast, despite what the people may say. I have to qualify that and say that a person has to have a pure heart, to get the right, to get the right feeling sometimes, right? If your heart is corrupt, if the heart is corrupt, then sometimes you may, be inclined to do some things that you really shouldn't do. You may be inclined to twist some things around. But likewise, on the flip side, not likewise, but on the flip side, person has a pure heart, man. Person has a pure heart. Even if a person gives them some information or a fatwa or something like that, that might be easy, comfortable, good for the nafs, if it don't sit well, can't follow it. Can't do that. Can't do that. No matter how many times you tell me I don't have to take care of my kids because I'm not a well-off. Can't do that. It don't feel right. Don't feel right. So, and there's always things. We can find, we can find things if we're so inclined. We can find easy outs. But it's so deep that the Prophet said, you got to consult your heart. Beyond anything that you hear, anything that people say, consult your heart. Because sometimes deep down inside, we get told things. It's like, yeah, that's fine. You can do that. And it ain't right. It don't even feel right. I don't care what excuse that you use. Don't even feel right. Or it's things that we should be doing and people, it don't sound right. You have to consult your. So again, that's why it's important for us to be spiritually sound in all phases of the deen. It's not just about what you know in terms of fiqh and aqidah, but also it's about the condition of your heart. So we ask Allah to forgive us for all of our sins, all of our shortcomings. Holy, have that stuff for love. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. So in conclusion, just a few points I want to make. Understand that, Shaitan, he doesn't want us to take responsibility. Doesn't want us to be accountable. Shaitan loves when we make excuses. Because if you constantly make excuses, if it's constantly someone else's fault, how can you really make tawbah? How can you go back to Allah if you keep making excuses? If you got a reason why you did something, why you're not wrong, then how can you make a true tawbah? How can you be sincere in that repentance? How do you feel bad if you were justified? It's very difficult. That's a very difficult task to pull off. To feel justified in doing something, but then at the same time say, "Oh man, I shouldn't have did that." And feel remorse. It's very difficult to pull off. If you're able to do that, you're amazing. But Shaitan is very, very clever, very, very slick. As long as you make excuses, as long as it's somebody else's fault, then you're not going to be. Then when you make tawbah. Because Allah has already told us that we're expected to make mistakes. We're expected to make mistakes. We're expected to sin. But the best of us are those who come back to Allah and repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The best of us who repent constantly. So if we don't have that self-awareness, then how can we make tawbah? And as long as accountability is present, division will be present. You can't be unified. You can't work as a cohesive unit without accountability. So as long as it's somebody else's fault, you can't work together. It's very interesting. I see this happen a lot in marriages where, one partner is very defensive. And you miss this opportunity for you to grow and work together as a couple. You miss an opportunity to really, really understand your partner because you're being defensive, because you got excuses, because it's not your fault. As long as it's not your fault, so you miss the opportunity to be able to listen and be able to relate to another person because you're busy saying, "Well, no, I ain't do that. It ain't my fault." And it gets so bad because you see people have relationship issues, whether it be marriage, whether it be siblings, friends, whatever. You see people have relationship issues. And many, many times, it's just misunderstandings. Many times, it's things that could have been fixed. If we would have just listened to each other, it probably wouldn't have been that bad. But we come out of these situations hurt. We don't want to admit that we're hurt, but we come out of these situations hurt. And then we're saying, you know what? There's no good Muslim men. Then we're saying there's no good Muslim women. Then we're saying, oh, the community's no good. Because we find ourselves in these relationships with people, not taking accountability, not giving other people the benefit of the doubt that we would give for ourselves. Assigning an evil intention to the action of others. We find ourselves hurt. This causes division. Because once you feel like a person is just evil and that's just how they are, and there ain't no reason to want them, then how you gonna talk to them? How you gonna make peace as brothers, as sisters? How? And lastly, we have to keep in mind that this accountability, not being inclined to point these fingers, it allows us to be able to grow and move forward. So even beyond just making Toba, like just on a practical level, you're able to refine that character whenever you're able to say, like, oh man, I made these steps and this is the mistake I made in this situation. This is what I could have did better. When you're constantly taking that accountability, taking that responsibility, that allows for those opportunities for growth to be present. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the best in this life and the best in the hereafter. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to spiritual fire. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in knowledge. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from knowledge and our benefits.
Ameen.